Hello students, today we will learn about the test cross which was done by Mendel. Now to learn about this cross, we already know what do we mean by monohybrid cross and how Mendel had experimented in order to get the offspring. So we know that when tall plants are crossed with dwarf plants, there will be the tall plants which will be obtained in F1 generation. Now since there are two contrasting traits or factors that are present, so therefore the union of these two plants will give the heterozygous plant or heterozygous dominant plant. So that's why we get all tall plants in F1 generation resembling to one of the parents, since capital T is dominant one. And because these plants are heterozygous in F1 generation, that is the reason why in F2 generation both the types of plants, that is tall as well as dwarf plants, were observed or obtained, right? But whether really these plants are heterozygous or homozygous, because both are the dominant one. So for the dominant phenotype, it can be homozygous capital T or it can be heterozygous capital T small t. So Mendel wanted to prove or confirm that these F1 generation plants are heterozygous, and because of this heterozygosity, the dwarf plants were also obtained. So we'll see with both the possibilities what the offsprings we would obtain. So how it was done? It was the cross between the F1 generation offsprings to that of the dwarf plants, and that the cross what was called as test cross. So we define this cross as a cross to test an individual's genotype, whether it is homozygous or heterozygous. So it is the crossing of the individual that is dominant, okay, and whose genotype is not known to us, is crossed with homozygous recessive individual or recessive parent for that particular trait. So we'll take both the possibilities, that the dominant phenotype can be capital T or other possibility is with capital T small t. So we have to cross these plants with that of the dwarf plant for that trait, okay. So parents are, we are taking one possibility, that if it is heterozygous dominant crossed with the homozygous recessive plant, that is the dwarf plant. The gametes that we will obtain from one plant, that is the capital T small t. So these gametes are from this plant, and the recessive plant would give the gametes small t respectively, right? So after the gamete formation, we will get the Punnett square, wherein there will be the random fusion of these gametes. So we'll see that these are the offsprings that will be obtained after the fusion of these gametes. So what do we see here? There are two plants, or half the number of plants are tall and half the number of plants are dwarf, right? Whereas if we take the other possibility, that is capital T or dominant homozygous tall plants crossed with dwarf plants, we get the gametes capital T, one gamete, again capital T in other gamete, and for recessive parent we get small t, right? So what we will get the offsprings if we consider, so those will be all tall plants. When we take the Punnett square, we'll see that all are tall plants, capital T fused with small t, or this capital T fused with small t. So we get all the tall plants here, right? So what is our conclusion? That when test cross is carried out, we come to know that what is the genotype of an individual. So F1 generation is heterozygous dominant, and because it is heterozygous dominant, it could give the dwarf plants also, whereas if it was homozygous dominant, it will not give the dwarf plants in F2 generation, right? So the ratio what we get here is 1:1. So what is the signification of these test cross? So we come to know whether the individual is homozygous or heterozygous. It may be in F1 generation or F2 generation. Second thing is, we come to know that F1 generation is heterozygous, since there is the dwarf as well as the tall individuals are obtained. The key points for this topic would be, what is test cross and its significance. Many problem based questions could be asked based on this cross with respect to any trait. For example, today we had discussed with an example showing the stem height wherein F1 generation tall plants were crossed with the dwarf parent. Similarly, based on the other traits, problem could be asked on which Mendel had experimented on. Thank you.